I never believed in those near-death experience stories. I always thought they were exaggerations, emotional tales made up by people searching for attention or meaning. I used to say, that could never happen to me. But one night, it did, and that moment changed everything. My name is Ethan, and I was born and raised in a small town in Guatemala. Life wasn't easy, but it taught me to be strong. My father walked out when I was just a boy, and I remember watching my mother cry in the dark, whispering to herself that she would never depend on anyone again. She'd look at me with tired eyes and say, "Never trust, never expect." Those words became the law of my heart. I built my world around self-reliance. If something was broken, I fixed it. If something was heavy, I carried it. I fought every battle on my own, and the more I succeeded, the more I believed I didn't need anyone, especially not God. I thought faith was a crutch for the weak, something people turned to when they couldn't handle reality. I prided myself on being logical, practical, and in control. People would talk about miracles, and I'd smile politely but roll my eyes inside. I didn't realize that all that independence, all that pride, was quietly building a wall between me and the very one who had given me the strength to stand on my own. One ordinary evening, that wall came crashing down. I was at home, fixing a porch light. The bulb had gone out, and without even thinking, I grabbed the ladder like I'd done 100 times before. It was a small, routine task, something simple that made me feel capable. But in one tiny misstep, my whole world shifted. The ladder slipped. I remember a flash of pain, and then silence. My breath stopped, and in an instant, everything I thought I knew about life and death dissolved. I felt myself rising, weightless, hovering above my own body. I could see the chaos below, neighbors shouting, people rushing toward me, but I couldn't speak, couldn't reach them. I tried to shout, tried to wave, but my hands passed through the air like smoke. And then, instead of fear, something unexpected happened. A light appeared, not harsh or blinding, but soft and warm, like a presence that knew me better than I knew myself. It wrapped around me like love itself had form. The noise of the world faded, and I felt peace, a stillness so deep it was almost holy. For the first time in my life, I wasn't in control, and I wasn't afraid. That's when the words I had once mocked came alive. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. It was as if those words were being spoken over me, not from my memory, but from the heart of God Himself. In that moment, I realized I wasn't just floating, I was being held. The God I had rejected, ignored, and reasoned away had never stopped loving me. He had been there through every lonely night, every bitter thought, every stubborn decision. The one I had pushed away was right there, reaching out to me when I least deserved it. And while my body lay lifeless, my soul was being awakened. But peace soon gave way to something darker. Without warning, I was pulled through a vast emptiness, a place beyond sound, shape, or time. It wasn't like closing your eyes, it was like being erased. Voices rose in the darkness, whispering my name, accusing me of every time I'd turned my back on truth. Their words pierced through me like fire. She never believed. She always rejected. She thought she knew better. Every ounce of pride, every argument I'd ever made against faith came rushing back, and I realized that all my independence, all my logic, couldn't save me from the reality of eternity. I was standing in judgment, and I knew I was guilty. Just when fear threatened to swallow me whole, a single point of light appeared in the distance. It was faint at first, then brighter, stronger, like hope breaking through despair. I was drawn to it, unable to resist, and as I drew closer, I realized it wasn't just light, it was a person. I knew, without a shadow of doubt, it was Jesus. The same Jesus I had mocked, the same name I had dismissed as superstition, was standing before me, alive and radiant. His eyes met mine, and there was no condemnation in them, only love. A love so pure, so powerful, that it melted every defense I'd ever built. I fell to my knees, ashamed, broken, yet somehow whole for the first time. He didn't need to say who he was. His presence said it all. Around us, the darkness disappeared, replaced by a kingdom of light unlike anything words can capture. Colors I had never seen, sounds that weren't music, yet filled me with perfect harmony, and beings that radiated worship surrounded him. It was heaven real, living, breathing, heaven. But even in that glory, I felt a weight pressing on me. I knew I didn't belong there, not because he didn't want me, but because I was still chained by bitterness, pride, and unforgiveness. And Jesus, with eyes that saw every hidden corner of my heart, showed me why. In one sweeping vision, my life unfolded before me. I saw the little child I once was, sitting beside my mother as she cried over the man who left us. I saw how her bitterness became mine. I saw how I'd built walls of distrust so high that love could never climb them. I saw how I turned to relationships that made me feel safe but kept me in control, convincing myself I was free when really, I was just afraid. Then came the image I dreaded most: my father. Older now, broken, sitting alone in regret. My heart screamed, "He doesn't deserve forgiveness." But Jesus' voice broke through the noise. "Forgive." I shook my head. "I can't." But he didn't back away. He said, "You've carried this burden long enough. It hasn't healed your mother. It hasn't changed the past. It has only imprisoned you." In that moment, I saw it all. My hatred hadn't protected me, it had poisoned me. My strength hadn't made me free, it had made me a prisoner. Jesus extended his hand toward me, and when I reached out, it felt like fire and peace all at once. The chains I had carried my whole life shattered. Bitterness, pride, anger, all of it collapsed under the weight of his love. I whispered the only words I could: "I choose you." And instantly, I was free. The peace that filled me was beyond anything I had ever known. My true identity wasn't in fear or pain, it was in him. But then, Jesus looked at me with a tender firmness and said, "You must return. Your work isn't finished." Before I could answer, the light faded, and I felt myself falling. Suddenly, I was gasping for air, surrounded by doctors and machines. I had been gone for 8 minutes, but what felt like eternity in his presence was only moments here on earth. Since that day, my life has never been the same. I called my father. My hands were trembling, but I said, "Dad, I forgive you." There was silence, then tears on the other end. "Daughter," he said, "please forgive me." In that moment, both of us were set free. I learned that forgiveness isn't about who deserves it, it's about who needs to be released. And the prisoner was me. Today, I live with purpose. I read the Word of God every morning and know that true strength doesn't come from independence, it comes from surrender. Friend, maybe you've been living behind your own walls of pride or pain. Maybe you've convinced yourself you don't need anyone, not even God. But I'm here to tell you, He's closer than you think. He knows your story, your scars, your secret battles. And He's not waiting to condemn you, He's waiting to hold you. The same Jesus who found me in the darkness is reaching for you right now. When you let go, when you forgive, when you say, "I choose you," chains will break, hearts will heal, and your true life will begin, because the truth will set you free. When my heart stopped beating that night, I didn't fall into nothingness, I fell into truth. One moment I was on my living room floor, the next I was somewhere far beyond this world. At first there was no sound, no light, no air, only a still, suffocating darkness. I couldn't see, couldn't move, couldn't even tell if time was passing. It felt like being buried alive inside my own soul. Then, faintly at first, I began to hear voices. They weren't comforting or kind. They were sharp, cold, and full of accusation. She never believed. She always rejected. She thought she knew everything. Their words pierced me like arrows, and I knew they were right. Every time I had rolled my eyes at someone's faith, every time I had mocked God in my mind, every time I had chosen pride over humility, all of it was echoing back in that darkness. There was nowhere to hide, No wall strong enough to protect me now. I tried to speak, to defend myself, but no sound came. And in that moment, I realized how wrong I'd been. My logic, my strength, my independence, all of it was useless here. The Bible verse I'd heard as a child suddenly rang true in my spirit. It is appointed unto man once to die, and after this, the judgment. Just when I thought I would be swallowed whole by fear, something changed. Far away, at the edge of that void, a single point of light appeared. It was so small at first, I almost doubted it was real. But the longer I looked, the brighter it grew. The darkness that had seemed infinite began to tremble, retreating from that light as if it couldn't stand to exist in its presence. And as the light drew nearer, I felt something awakening inside me, a warmth, a pull, a knowing that this was not just light. This was life. Then I saw him. I didn't need to ask who he was. My soul recognized him instantly. It was Jesus, the one I had denied, the one I had ignored, the one I had claimed wasn't real. And yet there he was, standing before me, alive, radiant, and filled with more love than I had ever imagined possible. His eyes met mine, and I expected judgment, anger, rejection. But there was none of that. There was only love, love so pure it was almost unbearable. It wasn't the kind of love that excuses wrongs or overlooks sin. It was a holy love that saw me exactly as I was and loved me anyway. Every wall I'd built around my heart crumbled in an instant. I fell to my knees, overwhelmed with shame and gratitude all at once. I had spent my whole life running from this moment, yet here he was, not to condemn me, but to rescue me. And as I looked at him, the world around us transformed. The darkness vanished, replaced by a kingdom of light beyond description. There were colors that don't exist on earth, sounds that weren't music, yet filled me with peace, and an atmosphere so alive with worship that even silence felt like praise. Angels surrounded him, radiant and powerful, their very presence vibrating with awe. And yet, even in that beauty, I felt a heavy truth. I didn't belong there. Something inside me was still bound, still heavy. I could feel chains around my heart, chains made of bitterness, pride, and unforgiveness. And Jesus, with eyes that could see every secret corner of my soul, gently began to show me why. In one moment, my entire life unfolded before me like pages in a book. I saw my childhood again the nights I sat beside my mother as she cried, her words filling me with bitterness. Men can't be trusted. They only bring pain. I saw how those words had become my armor, how I built my whole identity around never needing anyone. I saw how fear had disguised itself as strength. Then, I saw myself as a teenager, choosing relationships not out of love, but out of control. Relationships that felt safe, because they didn't remind me of my father's betrayal. I thought I was finding freedom, but in truth, I was only building higher walls. Jesus didn't accuse me. He didn't shame me. He just looked at me with such compassion that I broke. I realized I had been defining myself not by who I was, but by what I feared. Then the scene shifted, and I saw my father, older now, sitting alone in an empty room, his shoulders trembling as he wept. My first instinct was anger. I wanted to turn away, to shout, "He doesn't deserve my forgiveness." But before I could speak, Jesus' voice filled the air, gentle but powerful. "Forgive." I shook my head, tears streaming down my face. "I can't," I whispered. "You know what he did. You know the pain." But Jesus stepped closer. "I do know," he said softly. "I saw every tear, every night you felt alone. But if you want to be free, you must forgive. The bitterness you've carried has not healed your heart, it has imprisoned it." Those words hit me like thunder. In that moment, I saw the truth so clearly it shattered me. I wasn't protecting myself by holding on to hatred, I was poisoning myself. The very thing I thought made me strong was the thing that kept me bound. I cried out, "Lord, I don't know how." And then he did something that changed me forever. He reached out his hand. When I touched it, It felt like liquid fire and pure peace all at once. Every chain around me broke. Every lie I'd believed about love, about strength, about who I was, fell away. The walls of fear, pride, and pain crumbled in his light. I saw it all for what it was, a false identity built on hurt. Jesus spoke again, his voice steady and full of grace. I created you with purpose. I designed you for love, not fear. You can keep walking the same path you've known, or you can trust me and surrender. I could feel all of heaven waiting for my answer. My heart pounded. Every wound, every scar, every moment of pride rose up one last time, but this time I didn't fight. I lifted my face toward him and said, I choose you. The moment those words left my lips, it was like every part of me came alive. Light rushed through my soul. Peace filled me so completely that I thought I might dissolve into it. I was free. For the first time in my entire life, I knew who I was. Not a mistake, not a victim, not someone trying to prove their worth, but a child of God, loved, forgiven, and whole. All the fear I had lived with for so many years was gone. The shame that had followed me vanished in his presence. I looked around and realized that every color, every sound, every breath in that place was alive with his glory. The angels were still singing, and their song was no longer distant, it was inside me. I knew that if I stayed 1 second longer, I would never want to leave. And yet, as I stood there in perfect peace, Jesus looked at me with eyes that were both tender and firm. You must return, he said. Your journey is not finished. My heart sank. I didn't want to go back. But he smiled, as if to remind me that what I had received wasn't meant to stay in heaven, it was meant to be shared on earth. The light around me began to fade, and I felt myself falling, weightless, until the sound of machines and voices pulled me back into my body. When I opened my eyes, doctors were shouting, "She's back! She's alive!" I had been gone for 8 minutes. But I knew, in that short time, eternity had touched me. I had seen the face of Jesus. I had heard his truth, and I would never, ever be the same. When I opened my eyes, I could barely breathe. The bright hospital lights blurred above me, and the sound of machines echoed in my ears. Nurses were shouting, doctors moving fast, and someone said, "She's back." I didn't understand what had happened, but deep inside I knew I had crossed over, and God had given me another chance. They told me later that my heart had stopped for 8 minutes. 8 minutes without a heartbeat. 8 minutes when this body lay lifeless. But while the world called it death, I knew it had been life, life in its purest, truest form. I had stood in the presence of Jesus himself, and his words still burned in my soul. You must return. Your journey is not finished. Even though I wanted to stay in that light forever, I knew he had sent me back with a purpose. At first, I was weak, disoriented, and confused. The people around my hospital bed saw only a survivor, but I knew I was no longer the same. I had been made new. Every beat of my heart now felt like a gift, every breath a mission. I could still hear his voice echoing through me. Forgive. That single word followed me day and night. It pierced through the noise of the world, through the old bitterness that had taken root in me for years. Forgive. I knew exactly what he meant. For so long, I had carried a wound. I refused to let heal the wound of a father's abandonment. My father had walked away when I was a child, leaving my mother and me to struggle alone. I had built my identity around that pain, convinced that I didn't need him, that I was better off without him. But deep down, that anger had shaped every decision, every wall I had built, every relationship I had destroyed. It wasn't strength, it was poison. As I lay there in that hospital bed, I realized Jesus had shown me mercy beyond measure. He had forgiven me for everything, for my pride, my disbelief, my running from him, and he was asking me to do the same. I knew what I had to do, but my heart trembled at the thought. Could I really forgive the man who had caused so much pain? Could I really let go of years of anger and resentment? I remembered the moment in heaven when Jesus said, "If you want to be free, you must forgive." And I understood this wasn't just about setting my father free. This was about setting myself free. A few days after leaving the hospital, I sat in my small kitchen, hands shaking as I held the phone. My heart was pounding, and my mind was full of reasons not to call. "He doesn't deserve it," I whispered to myself. But then I heard another voice, softer yet stronger, the same voice that had spoken to me in eternity. "You didn't deserve my forgiveness either, but I gave it." That truth broke me. I dialed the number I hadn't called in years. The phone rang once, twice, and then I heard his voice, older, weaker, trembling. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Tears streamed down my face. Finally, I whispered, "Dad, I forgive you." There was silence on the other end, then the sound of him crying. Through his sobs, I heard the words I thought I'd never hear. "Daughter, please forgive me." In that moment, it was as if heaven opened again. The chains of hatred and pride that had bound us for so long broke into 1,000 pieces. Two hearts, one broken by guilt, the other hardened by pain, were set free in the same instant. It didn't happen because I was strong. It happened because God's love is stronger than any wound. When I hung up that phone, I felt a peace that words can't describe. The heaviness I had carried for decades lifted off me. It was as if the same light I had seen in heaven had filled the room. Forgiveness didn't change the past, it changed me. It didn't erase what had happened, but it freed me from being defined by it. I finally understood what Jesus meant when he said, "Whom the Son sets free is free indeed." From that day forward, everything about my life began to shift. I started reading the Bible daily, not as a religious duty, but as a love letter from the one who had brought me back to life. Every verse came alive. When I read, "Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free," I realized that truth wasn't just a concept, it was a person. Jesus is the truth, and when you meet him, he breaks every chain. I began praying every morning, thanking God for a new day, asking him to help me walk in his purpose. I started attending church again, not to fit in or to check a box, but to worship the God who had pulled me out of darkness. People would ask me what had happened, and I would tell them, "I met Jesus face to face, and he told me to forgive." Soon, opportunities came to share my testimony. At first, I was hesitant. I didn't want to be the center of attention. But each time I spoke, I saw hearts soften, tears flow, and people whisper, "If God could do that for you, maybe he can do it for me." That's when I understood why he sent me back. My story wasn't just about survival, it was about transformation. God took my brokenness and turned it into a message of hope. The same hands that once clung to bitterness were now lifting others up. The same mouth that once mocked faith now declared his glory. Now, I travel and speak wherever he opens the door. I tell people that forgiveness is not weakness, it's power. It's not surrendering to what hurt you, it's surrendering to the one who can heal you. I tell them that no matter how deep the wound, his love goes deeper. No matter how heavy the shame, his grace is greater. I used to think that my identity was shaped by pain, but I've learned that my identity is rooted in his purpose. I am not who my past says I am. I am who God says I am, chosen, redeemed, and free. Sometimes, when I share my story, people come up afterward and say, "Ethan, I wish I could believe what you're saying. But my wounds are too deep." And I look them in the eye and say, "Friend, I was just like you. I didn't believe either. But God met me in my unbelief. He found me in the darkness, and he can find you too." I've seen hardened hearts melt, estranged families reconcile, and people once crushed by guilt rise up with hope again. That's the power of forgiveness. That's the power of grace. Every morning, I wake up and remember that 8 minutes changed my forever. 8 minutes when I saw what really matters: love, mercy, and truth. I no longer chase perfection, because I've already met the perfect one. I no longer fear death, because I've seen what waits beyond it. My mission is simple: to tell the world that Jesus is real, that his love can reach anyone, anywhere, no matter how far they've fallen. He took a bitter, self-reliant skeptic from Guatemala and turned him into a messenger of mercy. And if he can do that for me, he can do it for anyone. So today, if you're holding on to anger, if you're trapped by resentment or regret, I want you to know freedom is closer than you think. You don't have to carry that pain another day. Let go. Forgive. Surrender. The moment you say, Jesus, I choose you, everything changes. He will take your ashes and turn them into beauty, your pain and turn it into purpose. The truth will set you free, just as it set me free, and from that freedom will flow peace, joy, and a love so powerful it can heal the deepest wounds and light even the darkest soul.